to another episode of Tell Me More. My name is Luke Stair. Katie Reed Hodges, Dr. Wiles, and myself are here humming, talking about the role of music in the worshiping life of the church. And honestly, we just had a ton of fun this week, and we hope you have a great time too. Thanks for listening. All right, well, it's Tell Me More time.
Tell me more time.
We're going to make a podcast today.
TMT.
I like it.
So, Sunday morning, great Sunday, preaching about the Song of the Sea, the Song of Moses, the Song of Miriam. Right. We can talk about kind of different interpretive takes on that, on why the names. You kind of glaze past that, but it was a good sermon. I think there's a lot of fun stuff for us to dive into. But I'd love to hear kind of more reflection on music, the role of liturgy and worship in the life of the church. I think that's a great place for us to start.
Well, I think it is too. Katie and I have a little song we'd like to sing, a little duet we've been working on. It's a little Simon and Garfunkel.
You guys
Bridge over
are
troubled
in
waters.
for a treat.
You want to do high or low?
And a one. And
I'm afraid I would throw you off.
oh,
you know?
yeah. I wouldn't want to mess with
No,
Okay, next time.
That's a classic.
Perhaps
maybe
at the-
sound of
at-
silence.
perhaps-
Sound of silence.
Sound of Silence.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
Oh, you're going for it.
Oh,
Although
I'm sorry.
that's
I'm
actually
sorry.
sounded good.
I'm sorry.
Ross, you didn't count me. You didn't count down, and I couldn't join you.
I just jumped into it, man.
Perhaps the live recording.
Okay, yeah.
We'll have a song,
But
only if it's Bridge Over Troubled.
Tell us about music,
Yeah.
Katie. You know, tell us about it.
Well, I'm not. I say I'm not musical, but I do have some musicians in my family.
Yeah.
I'm really not musical.
Yeah.
I mean, but my dad, smaller church, so different. You know, they're not career musicians, but my dad plays the guitar, my mom plays the piano.
Okay, so you
They have
music in your blood. Then.
I do. My uncle, who goes here, is in a band. I mean, they're my mom and her brother, my uncle, are. You know, they know theory. They know how to read music. They're legit.
Okay.
You know.
Then you qualify.
And I took piano and guitar lessons growing up, but none of them stuck. You know, you have to actually work with those. But I can play the guitar. Anyway, but I do appreciate music quite a bit, although I'm not a musician. But in the life of worship, isn't it interesting? Isn't it fascinating? Just in our DNA, that as we commune with a God, that somehow music is commanded of us, that's central to that. I mean, just like take a step back, isn't that wild? That the God that wants to know us, part of our coming together to be a part of life with him, involves music. And then, I don't know, it's just creative and wonderful. It's not just chanting of certain truths. It's not just liturgy that we read. It has a melody. It has harmonies. It has parts. It has instruments. It's just a beautiful metaphor, a beautiful richness that maybe, C.S. Lewis talks about life with God has this little bit, or Jesus' story, I think is actually, has this little quirk to it that makes it feel real. I'm butchering the quote, but that's the sense of it.
Good enough.
I think maybe something like that. It's just neat, rich, beautiful. That as the people of God, that music is a part of how we express ourselves to him. Art is a part of how we express ourselves to him. And so all that comes with that, just letting our kids be a part of that. Not even getting to the words we sing, which is so valuable and so important. Sometimes one of the critiques of contemporary worship is that it's not as thoughtful about the words we sing. Not here, but just in general, what's kind of come on the scene. Anyway, those are my initial thoughts. It shapes us, and it's beautiful, and it's a beautiful picture of the creativity of God.
It really is.
Every week.
And I really appreciated what you talked about on Sunday morning, that you don't, I'm not going to make a claim about your musical ability.
It's all good,
You
brother.
claimed.
I'm on record.
I'm
on record. Did I say it that way?
Best musician.
Did you see what I did there?
You are on record. This is officially recorded now.
I'm on record.
That's me scratching a record.
Okay, thank you.
But I think there's something truly significant too, that your participation, whether as a church member, is not based upon your musical ability. We want you to participate regardless of your ability, because ultimately this is not about how good or bad you are at music. This is
exactly
a relational piece of life with God that we practice together as the people of God.
Yeah, and I like it because it is universal. I mean, I say this all the time. I don't know that it comes out right when I say Cindy and I have been all over the world. I just mean we have been all over the world, and we've been in worship settings
but
everywhere.
Mostly in a missional way. Y'all didn't just like take years off and do a world, some people in retirement, which more power to you. Yeah. They cruise the world. They live on cruise ships. When you say you've been all over the world, it has been to see the people of God.
That's right. It's in missional context.
I mean, maybe that's helpful for you to kind of say.
That's what I mean to say. And so we've worshiped with people literally all over the world, and it's just a universal phenomenon. I mean, you can be in the most remote village in West Africa, or you can be in a cathedral in Europe, and people sing. The people
of
God
is a huge
sing.
Part of that,
so much part of it. And I like Cindy's family is very musical. Cindy's a little more of a natural musician, probably. I mean, she can read music. She would tell you that she can't read music, but what she means by that is that she's not as proficient as someone
she's not Brock.
Right. Yeah. But she reads music and is a music appreciator, and has a beautiful voice. In fact, when we first started in ministry, she led music at our church in Oklahoma. And so she can play the piano, plays mostly by ear, but she can read music. But her sister is just an incredibly accomplished musician, pianist, organist, was one of those, child prodigies, 12 years old. This is the church organist at age 12, that kind of person. And her dad is a musician. Her dad's family, they all play musical instruments. My family played the radio. We were a little more.
Hey, you still have to tune it.
That's right. Yeah.
Do you have any instruments in the house growing up? Not really.
No.
Did you, Luke?
No.
Yeah. I grew up playing a few instruments. My dad is also not a musical person, but my mom can sing really well. But I did band throughout middle school and high school.
What did you play?
Played French horn.
You've told me this.
Wow. There you go.
I played bass guitar, which is not hard.
But you read music.
I can read music.
Yeah.
And I can sing. Okay. I'm a decent singer.
Yeah.
I'm not asking to be.
That's because Baylor trained you up.
Yeah.
Well, they didn't train me. They threw me in.
That. Yeah.
So
they
Baylor has
me up. They threw me in the water.
You sing a cappella is what I've heard.
Yeah,
That's
I have.
Your favorite.
I'm not, so if the power ever goes out, I'm not doing my service.
So do you have a little bit of Church of Christ in your background, or no, this just happened to you?
Surprisingly, that's one of the few denominations I've not been a part of.
Yeah. You're outside looking in on that one. Okay, but tell us about this experience.
Yeah, so Baylor has a resident chaplaincy program that Katie and I both were a part of.
I did it too. It's a great program.
It is a great program, but they place seminary students in their dorms. They basically minister to college students, and so part of the dorm that I served in
and lived in, we lived there, which was a wild ride.
Kelsey and I's first, second, but really first home as a married couple was on the first floor of the honors men's dorm at Baylor University.
What a great way to start a life together. I think that's awesome.
How about that?
So, but
how about that?
This is a side note. Having lived in both a men's and then a women's facility, we would actually choose the guys every time because I could go to them.
Tell me more.
I could go to them and say, hey, my wife is a teacher and has to be up really early if they were allowed at night. And they would be so respectful and just, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
And the ladies?
And if you said that to the ladies that we lived with at the end of our time, they just kind of looked at you and stared and then closed the door and kept on going.
I don't even know what to do with that right there. I'm going to let that just stay right there. Okay.
But part of my dorm's expectations were I had to lead a prayer service 4 nights a week and
you had to lead a prayer. This is normal when you're in seminary and just working, but you had to lead a prayer service 4 times a week.
Yes. And I had to do my own a cappella music. So
awesome. Do you know,
memories.
I love it so much.
Do you know, I used to do, when I was in, I think when I started this. In Garland, I was pastor at Calvary Baptist in Garland, and we started a men's ministry Bible study that I led. We met every Tuesday morning at 6 o'clock for like 4 years.
That's maybe worse than 4 nights a week for me.
Yeah.
But somehow I got the idea that I wanted it to have kind of a worship kind of feel to it. And we didn't really have, that was back before contemporary music had made its way into churches like that. Yeah. And so we didn't have anybody who could do that. So I actually had a CD player. And so when we would gather, right when we got started, I would open with prayer and then I would hit a button and play just a contemporary song off of a CD, and we would all just sing with it. And so I was kind of doing music and Bible study.
It sounds like it.
Yeah.
My good
a rite of passage in
my
ministry.
good friend who is now a good friend in seminary. Let me rephrase that. Josh Barrett, who's now pastor in North Carolina, I believe, doing well. Married one of my good friends, Laura. They're great people. His first pastorate was when we were in seminaries part-time in, I believe the town is called Permelia.
Yes.
Permelia.
Absolutely.
And they ordained him. I think they were really good to him. It's a good first spot. So if you're listening from that church,
yes,
y'all loved him well.
That's where Clint Dobson was also.
Yeah, I think it's a really good church to pastor when you're.
Church.
So I say this with all due respect to them, as if this is going to get to them. But they worshiped on Sunday morning along to an Alan Jackson gospel music CD.
They did.
I think they picked a couple each week.
Clint used to talk about it.
But that was,
right.
As far as I know, my story's from Josh. That's 100%. They just chose different songs every week. And so that Alan, I'm sure that means, but I'm sure that album means a ton to them.
Yeah.
Well, I just told both of those. Burned in their hearts.
I had both of those young men in my preaching class, and I told them both.
Good guys.
I said, if you want to not have that much difficulty, with a music minister, just have a CD player. And
$13.99 for the Alan Jackson gospel CDs.
Oh man, Lord help us! But,
I love it.
But music to me, I was going to say,
like that.
Oh,
but that's what you. I mean, but you can do. I mean, like. Listen to these stories of people figuring it out because they know how important it is.
I was about to say
to bring it into worship.
That's the thing.
You don't have to have.
That's exactly.
We're blessed to an embarrassing extent.
We're embarrassingly blessed.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah. And you think about the way God has gifted people. It's one of the things I've thought about through the years when you talk about spiritual gifts. Is the list in the scripture exhaustive? Because I almost feel like I would put music in there as a spiritual gift because I just think some people have that. And I think about how that has blessed all of us, these people that can write music, and somehow orchestrate it for everybody. Cindy and I talk about that sometimes. Since she is a musician, I'll just ask her, how does this happen? How did they do this? Did they just sit down one day at a piano and go, I think it ought to sound like this? Mm-hmm. And Cindy said, well, the ones who are really good, they hear it in their head. And then they were able to write it down, and then we all get to sing it. And that's a fascinating process to me that you just kind of create this tune, in your head somehow. And all the theory behind all that of how it works. And to me, that's a remarkable gift. And so the people that can write it, the people that can sing it, the people that can play it, think about how that serves us. And it's almost like we take that for granted every week. We walk in the sanctuary just assuming that's all already been done for us. Somebody has written this. Somebody has orchestrated it for all the instruments we're going to have. Somebody has rehearsed it all. Somehow or another, all the people who know how to play all those instruments just kind of mysteriously show up in our room. And
it sounds great.
Oh my goodness. And it leads all of us into this experience with God that it's almost like it's just unique. There's a uniqueness to being in worship with God's people singing. And I was trying to communicate that Sunday morning. That's what transcends your own personal ability. Yeah. And I was hoping, I was being honest Sunday morning about myself, but I was hoping it would help others as well to be thoughtful about their role in this because I know I'm not a good singer. For those of you listening, we, a while back, some of our staff members requested permission to record me singing Christmas carols. Y'all remember this, right?
Dr. Wiles' mic is always on.
Right.
Just
muted.
Muted.
So
did they ask, so when you were being recorded, you knew you were being recorded?
Oh,
in that one?
Yes,
it wasn't like they went back and forth.
No, that morning, Kyle, when they were putting putting the microphone on me, he just said, no, I love Kyle. He was like, Dr. Wiles, today's the day. If you'll just sing the Christmas carols. Now, if you don't want to do this, we will not do this.
Yeah, I don't think he invented this idea.
But anyway, so it was just a morning. That's right. And it was 8:30 in the morning, and I was a little congested, but regardless, it was when Aaron was just leading carol after carol after carol. They were just back to back to back to back.
And it was the hits. It was like Hark the Herald Angels.
Yeah, it was all of the songs that we all know. Yeah. Okay. And so I'm singing them, knowing that I'm being recorded. And I'm already knowing how bad it is, and I'm kind of laughing to myself.
Playing it up
yes, I almost stopped and said, "This is ridiculous."
But then it became the soundtrack
to our Christmas party.
Yeah, so at our Christmas
and it was perfect.
party,
They played it kind of at the end, and it was like media team did a good job of making it.
Yeah, they did. It was fun. Everybody got to hear me sing.
Not every pastor.
My favorite
I just
Christmas
want to remind
carols.
our church, not every pastor is willing to do that and be silly with his staff. So
anyway.
we appreciate that.
And there were a couple times I was, one of our staff members came up to me after and said, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. So
I had that same
take
feeling.
that as an incredible compliment.
For me, musically, not as bad as I thought is huge. It's huge. I'll take it. So.
But think about in this story, though, you're in the middle of this. Here's one of the questions
tell me the context of all that. Where are we?
Biblical scholars biblical scholars, Old Testament biblical scholars just struggle with how all this got put together. Y'all know that. Y'all both been to seminary. Yeah. They just have a hard time figuring out where did this come from.
If I can elaborate on just some of the complexity. I was even explaining this to someone this morning. In the original manuscripts, Greek and Hebrew, spaces, like you think about spaces and writing between words, had not been invented yet.
That's right.
Paragraphs had not been invented yet.
Right.
Punctuation marks had not been invented yet. And so, literally, if you were to pull up a original Greek or Hebrew manuscript, there's no spacing, there are no paragraphs, there's no punctuation.
Right.
By the time you get to Greek, we are blessedly given capital letters.
That's right.
But there are no capital letters in Hebrew.
That's right. Makes it really difficult.
And it's a primarily oral tradition.
Right.
I mean, at this point in human history, most history is getting passed down through story.
That's right.
That has motif. I mean, it's just totally different.
And so one of the questions is, okay, you're reading the book of Exodus. Let's just assume that you accept the more traditional view of the books of the law written by Moses.
Right.
So let's just make that as an assumption. Okay. So you're reading Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy with the understanding that Moses is the principal author of all of this. So when did he write all of this? So you basically have about 39 years for him to write it, if that makes sense. In other words, they leave Egypt, they make their way to Sinai camp, and then you've got this 39 years of we usually call it wanderings, but they were being led by the Spirit. Now I get it. It was a judgment, but at the same time, they're being led. So it's this, what some scholars say is, well, what we're reading here is the reflection of Moses later, maybe right at the very end of his life, if you will. He's looking back over these last 39 years. He's got perspective now of what God's done, what God has said, whatever. I would say that's the more predominant view of the traditional understanding of the authorship. Now, as y'all know, there are competing views of, the documentary hypothesis that you've got other texts that come from other sources assembled much later that represent the Yahwist of the Elohim being used as the name for God, the Deuteronomic, all the priestly sources, all those. But anyway, but what's fascinating is, I kind of got lost a little bit in some scholarly debate about this song because there's a group of scholars who argue that this is the earliest piece of literature that Moses ever wrote down. And what they say is that, okay, you're on this journey, this incredible thing has happened. Moses obviously is chronicling all this in his mind. He's got the inspiration of the Spirit. We understand all that. But they've just had this unbelievable, unforgettable, miraculous delivery, and Moses just stops and pens a poem and sets it to music. And there are some scholars who say this is the first piece of written literature from the hand of Moses. I actually kind of like that because to me it shows just the power and the beauty of art and music and how it kind of transcends the narrative, if that makes sense. It's like you're right in the middle of this complex narrative, all of a sudden Moses stops and just sings. In the song, it's not like you can dissect the song and then go back and try to compare it to all the actual events. You know what I mean? Like it's pure history. That's not what we all know. Poetry is not that. No. It's much more.
And we get in trouble if we try to make
absolutely. So I actually, I'm going to go ahead and put myself in that camp and say I think this just may have been the first thing Moses wrote. That he's just expressing his praise and thanksgiving to God for what happened, and even with a little bit of a prophetic edge to it. And the reason, because the latter part of the poem, He's talking about what's going to happen in Egypt. Well, think about it. If this was the first thing he wrote, this is all fresh on his mind. God has just delivered them, and he's told them, I'm taking to the promised land. I mean, I think in his mind, here in a couple of weeks,
we're going to be home.
We're there. And look what he just did to Egypt. What do you think the Canaanites, like all the ites?
Yeah,
I feel
the
like
Amalekites,
at this point,
the Canaanites.
in Moses' mind, all the ites are a joke compared to Egypt.
They're the preeminent military power of the world.
What are they going to do? That's what I like, the innocence of it and the creativity of it and the artistry of it.
The language of it is incredible.
It's just beautiful to me.
It is.
And so I kind of like that idea that maybe this is the first thing he wrote. And so that helped me, even as I was studying and getting ready, I kind of reread it through those lenses, and I thought, way to go, Moses. Maybe the first thing you did was write a poem, before you ever wrote in the beginning. And that even says something about the power and the force of music and art, even in the minds of someone like Moses, And then I love how the people of God sang, and then Miriam responds. And I don't know how the women were participating in this. It sounds to me like everybody was singing, but I love the fact that Miriam even felt led to just repeat the whole thing, get musical instruments. And it's like they just stopped to celebrate what God had done. And the best way to celebrate it was to sing about it, So, and then I'd never thought much about it. Obviously, I've read the book of Revelation how many times, but I just never have given much thought. You get to Revelation 15 and it says, and they were singing the song of the servant, God's servant Moses. Yeah. So this song of redemption is still reverberating somehow in the halls of heaven, if you will.
Yeah.
So this Exodus story kind of
which is such a
goes all the
beautiful
way
concept.
through. Yeah.
And again, I studied English literature as my undergraduate degree, so there's a writing structure known as chiasm. And really what that just means is you can write things in a symmetrical way where they're even. And so there are some scholars who will point to things like this, that we're going to sing the Song of Moses in Revelation, that actually point to that the Bible itself across the Genesis to Revelation is symmetrical. So if you think life begins in the garden and then in Revelation it's going to end in the garden, and then you add to that, you have the Exodus narrative where this song gets sung, and then we're going to sing it again before life ends in the garden. Well, it really begins. It's not an ending.
New beginning.
And so there's a beautiful symmetry to that,
I like that.
across the entirety of Scripture.
And if you believe God is the one who's engineered all that creativity,
how about that?
Then that would make sense, wouldn't it? And
the Bible's cool.
Yeah.
Anybody that insults the Bible probably hadn't read it.
That's exactly
not critique and genuine question, and, but
no, it's a masterful work.
It's incredible.
One of the reasons it's so enduring is because of
it's incredible.
that. It really is.
And I don't want to insult other texts of other religions, but I will say, as I am biased, the Bible is just the best.
Yeah, it stands alone, really, particularly in antiquity.
And the God behind it.
Yeah, stands alone.
And
so when I think about just the imagery of all of it that's woven through everything, really, like for example, this summer we're going to be using the Gospel of Mark. Well, Mark sometimes, in my opinion, doesn't get credit for being the artist that he was. But all of these stories and the miraculous deliverance of God and the new beginnings that God offers us, it's in the imagination of these people. It's like they can't help themselves. And so you think about the opening of Mark, he talks about Isaiah preparing the way, the Hodos, for us, or for the Messiah rather. And then the next thing you know, you're in the wilderness with Jesus. He goes to the wilderness to get baptized. He goes
how long?
The wilderness to be tempted for 40 days.
40?
And so it's like the way, the Hodos, ex-Hodos is the way that God led the children of Israel out. And now Mark is established in the new story or the new beginning of the gospel, which he says, the good news. And where does he begin Jesus' ministry and life? In the wilderness, in doing this battle and being delivered. It's like the new Exodus is right here in front of you. And then we get to the book of Revelation and you're still singing about it. It's just, like you said, it's a tapestry. It's just all woven together. And if you're paying attention, then, you can just obviously you can just roughshod read through it. But if you pause and look at all this, truly is a beautiful weaving together of a masterful story. Yeah. And I think this song, I love the fact that Moses felt led to just stop and sing, because I think the force and the power of collective corporate music, it just is powerful, and we've all had those experiences. I can think of times in my life where there have just been moments that I just have etched in my memory of being with God's people singing, where I was moved in a way that I just couldn't hardly put into words. And so that was what I was trying to communicate Sunday morning. I think that's why we're commanded to do it. Sing to the Lord a new song. Keep singing. You don't have to be Aaron Toms and Brock and our new Michael Glenn. You don't necessarily have to be one of those kind of people. You can still sing with fully throated.
Can I ask a question that's going to derail us only for a minute, but I promise to bring us right back.
Do it.
Okay. Did y'all have a song at your wedding? Like a particular song that meant something to y'all?
Yeah.
We sang a song, yeah.
Did you?
Will you tell me what it is? Yeah.
Well, my wife is a Dan Fogelberg
I'm not familiar.
fan. Y'all don't know Dan Fogelberg?
Do you?
Okay.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Okay. Well,
we're of different
You
generations.
did get married before we were born.
okay. Sorry. Yeah.
But
well,
we want to know.
he was kind of
Tell me more.
His father was a band director. He has the song "Leader of the Band." I don't know if y'all know that song.
I feel.
He has a
feel
song
young.
about Kentucky, but he has a song called "Longer Than," and it's about love. And so we had some of his music at our wedding. Longer Than.
Because it marks a moment. That's what I was thinking about. Music marking a moment. Sometimes those songs can mean something then for you, and then can continue to be.
Well, you two can look up Dan Fogelberg.
I
He was a
will.
folk singer. He lived in Telluride, Colorado.
Oh.
His dad, the leader of the band is. Do y'all know that song?
That is twice Dennis Wiles has sung in this.
Oh, well.
I love it.
So,
great.
Luke, did y'all have
We
a song
sang,
that found?
kind of collectively, we sang House of God Forever by John Foreman, which is a musical version of Psalm 23. So we had everybody sing at our
Do you
wedding.
know John Foreman?
nope.
He's the lead singer of Switchfoot.
Well, I know
Have you heard of
Switchfoot,
Switchfoot?
but I wouldn't know.
He did some
I didn't know
solo
his
albums.
Name, yeah.
He did some solo albums.
But
that are
apparently
really
by
good.
request of his wife. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
His wife said, I want you to write more hymns,
Okay.
more worship songs, I
I'll
guess.
send you some songs.
Okay.
They're very worshipful.
I do know
They're very
DC
good.
Talk.
I do too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jesus freak. Go on.
Okay.
What will
That's-
people
in fact,
say?
In fact, that's what we sang at our wedding. Jesus freak.
I know Toby Mac.
Ha ha ha. We didn't do that.
Toby Mac.
Love it. I just
He's
think when
back
you talk
on
about
a DC
music-
track that's jacked.
Oh, you do
beyond
know-
comprehension.
This
I
is
believe
old
that I
Toby
failed to
Mac.
mention that.
Not only
Oh, sorry.
has Dr. Dennis
Sorry,
Wiles sang
sorry.
on the podcast, he is now
kind of
rapped.
rapped.
I'm just saying.
Kind of rapped.
I've just got hidden talents, y'all. It's kind of scary when you think about it.
It is. The depths. We will never plumb.
But
We will never plumb.
well, so but
Okay,
what you
well,
think about?
I wanna bring it- I wanna
but
bring
you
us
played
back 'cause I
music
have
at
a
your
good
wedding because it
question.
matters.
That's
It's
it.
a moment that you capture.
Yeah,
And,
music
and
marks the moment.
here's a follow-up. Have you been to a wedding without music?
Well, no. I mean, at some point, I guess every wedding I've ever done, there's a musical component.
Right.
Yeah, it'd be
Have
hard
you ever
to
been to one that just said no?
proceed.
Yeah.
without
And
a
I've, been to,
song.
and I've even been to pretty simple weddings, but they still figure out how to have
Now,
songs.
maybe, like I've had a wedding
I
or
did.
two in my office, just
Okay.
2 or 3 people.
Yeah.
Where we didn't
You
have
bypass
music.
that.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. But I'd say most all understand marking the moment with that. Anyway. I think
Next time you can offer to rap Toby Mac for them.
Yeah. Then, my gosh, every wedding. Okay.
Back to
the text.
Yeah. You derailed us. Now put us back.
I will. Thank you. The language, the depth of it, some of the vocabulary is incredible.
yeah.
I'm reading a little bit right here, and then Luke, I know you
Luke's
have
got to
some.
do some. Luke is getting ready to do a Hebrew lesson for us.
I am teeing.
Oh, okay.
him
That's what
up.
you're doing, getting him ready.
Okay, we're
Yeah.
getting ready.
So some of these, like I'm reading verse 7. In the greatness of your majesty, you threw down those who opposed you. You unleashed your burning anger. It consumed them like stubble. By the blast of your nostrils, the waters piled up. The surging waters stood like a wall. The deep waters congealed in the heart of the sea. And then you could just keep going. Like this
Wow.
strong.
It is.
I mean, you threw down.
Yeah. That's
Those
the
who
beauty of
oppressed
poetry, though, right? That you get to just.
Yes.
expressed so fully.
Yeah, this is not a historical account because that would have just said the water's open.
That's right,
and the chapter before might
you already
be more
had
of that.
that. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But okay, look, there's a few words in there that you want to point out.
Yeah, so
that we would miss. Those of us that aren't Hebrew scholars would miss.
we have to remember when
He just keeps rolling.
we are reading the literature from a different culture, which this is literature from a different culture. Thousands of years ago, different language, different culture, different customs. We associate different parts of our bodies with different emotions. So think about that. When as modern Americans, our hearts are the seat of love.
That's right.
We get butterflies in our stomach, and that's the way we talk about being nervous or excited.
Your head, you might have your head in the clouds. If you're foggy, that kind of thing.
So we use different body parts and associate them with different emotions. Well, the Hebrew people were the same, but they associated different body parts with different emotions than we do. One of those in particular is the nose. So in Hebrew literature,
Tell us more, Luke.
you didn't think today when you were going to listen to the podcast that I was going to talk about noses so much.
You literally never know what we're going to talk about.
You don't?
Nor do we.
I was about to say.
Okay,
Not only you not know.
So what do I need to
we.
know about the nose?
So in Hebrew literature and Hebrew kind of symbolism, the nose is actually the seat of anger. So if you were to describe in Hebrew literature someone being
Say
patient.
that one more time. The nose?
The nose is the seat of anger.
Okay.
So it's what's associated with anger in Hebrew literature. So, for example, if you were to go read in Exodus 34 verse 6 that God is slow to anger, the literal wording there is God is long of nose.
There you go.
Which basically in Hebrew thought, the longer your nose is, the more patient you are. Whereas we think the longer your nose is, the bigger the liar you are. Different.
And if you had a little short nose?
You're more like,
Hothead.
Yeah, hothead. It's like having a long fuse. So literally, again, Exodus 34:6, God is long of nose. He is slow to anger. He's got a long fuse.
So we're going to get nose in this poem here.
We do. We get nostrils. It's the same word in Hebrew because the words in Hebrew are not typically too specific. So it's the same word for nose and nostrils. Contextually, we know it's nostrils because your nose doesn't flare, your nostrils do, in English at least. And so again, think about that. When you're angry, your nostrils flare.
Right.
When you're angry, your nose turns red. Those sorts of things. That's kind of the root of the idiom.
Imagery, yeah.
So God is not just with his nostrils. He is flaring his anger. He is expressing his indignation, his righteous anger at the Egyptians. So
Again, very poetic.
And then you also talked about Hesed.
yeah,
God's
so this
steadfast. Well,
steadfast love,
what's it translated in this NIV? Usually it's steadfast
Unfailing love. I believe
unfailing
it is.
love.
Okay.
Verse 13.
So I think the English language.
So you could miss that too.
You could.
I mean, unfailing love is a beautiful thing, but it's not Hesed.
It's a deep word.
It is a deep word, and I think the English translation,
I
Bible
say
translation,
Hesed. What do you say?
Chesed.
No.
Which is why I say
You have to have a little
Hesed.
bit of a cold to say it. It's okay though.
Okay, but go ahead, sorry.
So I think the English translation that nails it is actually the Jesus Storybook Bible.
Okay.
Kids' Bible.
It's a kid's Bible. It's a storybook Bible. And it translates this kind of concept as never stopping, never giving up, unbreaking, always and forever love of God. And it uses that line throughout the Jesus Storybook Bible. So if you have kids or grandkids and you're reading that Bible to them, when you think unfailing love or steadfast love, which is how in English we typically translate chesed, take that phrase, that sentence.
And if you have kids and grandkids and are just looking for a Bible that's pretty good, that one gets a lot of the stories right. Maybe for like grade school kids. My kids are too young.
Yeah.
Because it's not just a picture
It's
book.
a good preschool.
Yeah, that word sometimes even translated mercy. You know,
Yeah.
it's just a hard word to put into English. You know, it's just so.
It's taking a shot at trying to describe the
And I will
character
say,
of God.
only God cheseds in the Old Testament. People don't do it.
Yeah.
It is a
People
God
can't.
thing only.
It's just covenant love for us, right? And,
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Well, I love that Moses uses that word in this text. And another beautiful thing about this poem is the first 12 verses ish are looking back at what God's just done, and it's another thing I like about it is particular. It's not like just thank you, Lord, for all you've done. It's like thank you, Lord, for smiting the Egyptians, for winning a victory we could never win for ourselves. And then describing the victory, just how powerful it is and how forceful it was and how overwhelming it was and how unforgettable it is. And then you get to verse 13, and then he turns and looks toward Canaan and says, now this same God is going to lead us into this new land, and the people of Canaan, they're going to be still as a stone, he says. In other words, they're not,
Beautiful
again,
imagery.
that language, they're not going to even be able to respond to us, just like we just saw the Egyptians
What a great model,
captured,
too.
Look behind you, now look ahead and lean into where you're going. I
thank
think
God
that's part of it.
in detail. I mean, thank God,
Yes.
not just thanks God for my life, but
Right.
thank God for
Right.
What you
whatever
have
it is that
rescued me
you're
from.
Yeah,
Which I think
whatever it
that's
is
a
you're
good
truly
thing to
grateful
do.
for.
Sometimes I do. I was doing that the other day in my office. I thought, okay, Lord, I've had a busy season here, so I sat down in my journal, and I journal. My journal is I don't want to say fits and starts. That sounds too haphazard. I'm better at it in some seasons than others, but I just felt led to sit down and just write out just specifically, what am I thanking you for? And I just started listing just actual things where I've seen him at work. I've watched him do things that were beyond my ability to do, that some of it I tried to address, and then I believe God used what I did, but he even took it even further than in a way that only he can. So I just felt led to write it down so that when I look back, sometimes I like to look back at my journal. I'm not just going to have a season where I say, man, thank you, Lord, for all you've done for me. It's like, this is going to call to mind, oh yeah, I remember when I was going through, oh yeah, man, I remember how that was. And oh yeah, I remember how that was. And so now,
You just got to approach that, but a really good spiritual discipline, by the way.
It's just a good thing, But I'm already finding myself facing the future, asking the Lord, what about this? How's this going to go? Where are you leading us in this way? So this poem, song, kind of just affirmed that practice in me, even this week as I was studying.
It's a great
good
model.
thing to do.
It's our word and deed text this week, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not making it up. Yeah.
We're supposed to look at it all week and encourage our kids to think about this. Because,
a lot to take from
obviously the plagues are a little challenging to translate to our children, But think about all the things that the Egyptians did.
Yeah.
Think about how they treated the Jews. Think about all the little boys that were massacred by the Egyptians. This is a hard story in some ways. But if you focus on the deliverance side of what God's done, and not only that, God gave, as I think we can point this out in our devotional this week, God gave Pharaoh and the Egyptians numerous chances before they get to that 10th plague. Over and over
Ryan Chandler,
and over and over.
I'm giving another plug for the word indeed because it's just a good practice. And our church is doing it together, which has a lot of power. But Ryan Chandler wrote the Parent Spotlight this week about that. If you're struggling, if you're a parent listening or a grandparent, and you're like, how do you even start talking about plagues with kids? He has a good little paragraph or two just to, isn't he good? Aren't we glad to have him?
Good.
Aren't we glad to have Ryan Chandler? But yeah, he wrote that one. We don't always accredit who wrote what. The deeds Luke wrote. So if you're reading them this week, the pastor wrote the devotional, Ryan wrote the Parent Spotlight, Luke wrote the deeds.
And it's good. It's thoughtful. I mean, thinking through God's deliverance of these people. I mean, this is creation, Exodus, exile. These are the stories of the Old Testament, that capture God's hand at work, that shapes their theology, that builds a crescendo looking towards a Messiah. I mean, all this is woven together. That's why I've enjoyed our time in Exodus. I'm still enjoying it because I just think it's hard to exaggerate its role in the minds of the Jews and how it continues to be played out throughout even the history of Christianity and ultimately in the book of Revelation. So it's pretty awesome. So, anyway, so are y'all waiting on me to sing longer then?
Well, no.
From Dan Fogelberg?
May I, in closing?
Yeah.
Oh.
Did you find
copyright
it?
issues if
No,
we play
you
it.
didn't. Look at you.
Oh, man, you're
Longer
right.
than
I'm going to play it.
We would play a
Luke,
song for you. There's a good chance it might have to get edited
Higher
out.
Kyle might take it completely out.
Well, I'm afraid YouTube is going to flag us.
Kyle, you can decide.
Just in case. Thanks for listening.
Yes.
If it's completely silent, it's because it didn't work. Is this it?
That's it. I can sing it for you.
That's beautiful.
You know it won't get edited if I sing it. Here's how it goes.
Did y'all sing it to each other on your wedding?
No. Longer than there have been fishes in the ocean, higher than any bird ever flew, longer.
What were y'all doing in this moment?
There have been stars
Just staring
up
at
in
each other?
the heaven. I've been in love with you. That's it.
That is lovely. I hope that we can play it. But if not, okay, we're back because the song's over. Thank y'all for listening. Have a great week. Thanks for listening to the Tell Me More podcast today. You can subscribe to this podcast on your app of choice, or you can visit us at fbca.org to find out more information about the podcast and our church. Thanks for listening. Have a good day.